Hi, Steve.
Hello?
Hey,
Can you hear me?
I can hear you. So far, it's just me, you, and Mike.
Can you mute Mike?
Mike will
What if
mute.
no one shows up?
What's
It'll be
that?
a quick webinar.
If no one else shows up, I think I'll be more upset about that.
Well, I mean, if no one else shows up, it says that, either A, it's not that important to them, or B, they have confidence that, that it's being handled.
Yeah.
The invites to attend this, that went to area directors and powerlifting coaches. Is that right?
Yes, it did.
And with the suggestion to share it elsewhere.
Yep. Oh,
Okay.
we do have someone. Scott Shiflett is signing on.
Yep. It doesn't look like he has his audio hooked up yet.
Hi, Scott. Thanks for joining us. I'm going to unmute you. Can you try talking just to make sure we can hear you? Hey, Scott, are you there? Scott, not sure if you can hear me, but if you can, could you try talking so we can see if your sound is working? If not, I'll try to figure it out. Oh, we have LJ joining us too. Perfect. Hi, LJ. Would you mind unmuting yourself so we could test your sound?
Okay.
Hi, perfect. Oh, great. Scott, if you can hear me, if you try to, you can either chat me or ask a question. That way I can see if it's letting you hear things, just because we're unable to hear you. Hey, Mike, do you think, should I get started or should I give it a few minutes?
No, it's 4 after 7. I would go ahead and other folks just catch up.
Okay. So, LJ, if you wouldn't mind muting yourself, that way whenever you have something to say, you can unmute, but it just kind of keeps out the background noise. And Steve, if you could do the same thing, that would be awesome.
Got it.
Thank you. So thank you all for joining me for the Fall Sports Festival debrief tonight for powerlifting. My name is Kendall Zeslitz. I'm the Regional Sports Director for Eastern Maryland, and I'm also the staff lead for powerlifting. So the reason we are having this tonight is, as I'm sure many of you are aware, our powerlifting competition this past fall wasn't held to the standards that we like to have all of our events have with Special Olympics Maryland. So this is kind of just to let you know what issues and solutions we have identified, and also to get your feedback. You are the coaches, you are the ones who work directly with the athletes, so what you have to say is extremely valuable to us. I would like to highlight my sports management team, the active members on it, because they have played a huge role in kind of taking everything that happened at Fall Sports Festival and helping me create a plan to move forward. So we have Jim Downs, Dan Zotarelli, Kathy Barrett, and Kenny Long, and they have all been incredible help. So all props to them, because I wouldn't be able to do it without them. Also, everything that I go over this evening, I'm going to type up into notes, and I'll be sending that out tomorrow to everyone who's registered for the webinar, as well as all of the powerlifting coaches. That way everyone can kind of see our plan for right now. And if you have something, an idea that pops up, say, tomorrow or at a later time, that way you can just send it to me. I know I always wake up at 2 in the morning with an idea, so feel free to send whatever ideas you have. I'm very open to all of them. To start off, I want to talk about the issues that we identified with this powerlifting competition. The first one.
Kendall, can you pause for just a second?
Sure.
Sorry, and being out of state, you may not be aware of this, but we do need to let everyone know that the session's being recorded. Maryland has a law that everyone who's involved with any kind of an audio recording needs to be informed that it's being recorded. So just so that we're in compliance. And we're recording it so that we have access to the notes, and if we need to go back and listen to something to clarify a point. So
perfect. Thank you, Mike.
Yeah, just wanted to be sure that we were in full compliance there.
So with the issues that we identified, like I said, the length of wait before competition actually began. This was the most prominent issue that we heard from coaches and parents and everyone who really attended. And all of the other issues kind of tied together with this. I just separated them because we have different solutions for all of them. So our second issue was the debate between using kilograms and pounds. Our third issue was having inaccurate initial weights given and needing an equipment check at weigh-in. Our fourth issue was needing to train the volunteers more intensively as spotters, loaders, and officials. And the final issue was not knowing the order of flights until day of, which caused our athletes and their families not really to be able to plan. So if they were in the third flight, they could have arrived way later than they needed to. So that's something that we definitely want to address. At this time, does anyone have any other issues that they think we should discuss during this webinar? And I can just add it in. We can create a little slide on it.
I think I was not there. I haven't been involved with your state games for a couple of years since I stepped away from the coaching. But I think a lot of the things that you're discussing here is that you don't have many people who are experienced meet directors. The issues that I encountered while involved with the powerlifting were they want to follow USA powerlifting rules. However, those rules are not enforced consistently. So in my time with the Special Olympics, I think that the group, or whoever your leadership is, has to make a decision. Is this going to be an event that allows athletes to experience what it's like to do the sport of powerlifting, and only the two events at this event? Or is it going to be, hold on. Oh. Okay.
Hey,
LJ,
Dan,
is that background noise? It might be
Yeah.
Dan.
Yeah, it's Dan. I just came out of that meeting. I'm trying to do two jobs at once here. Sorry.
That's okay. If you can,
Oh, no.
we have the line open, but if you can mute your phone, that would
Okay.
just unmute it whenever you want to add anything to the conversation.
All right. Just tell me, how do I unmute it?
I'm sorry?
How do I unmute that?
Whatever you use on your own phone.
I got it. Okay.
Yeah.
Got it. Okay. Thank you. Thank you.
So just to finish up, you know, I think that the Maryland Special Olympics powerlifting needs to come to terms with how they want to run this event. If they're going to use USAPL and guidelines, then they must use the standards that USAPL puts forward. But, you know, in my experience, it seems that there are still things that are lacking on the state level. When some of the athletes went to the national games, we still, I don't think, have reached a decision whether athletes are allowed to use a lighter bar, which was put all the way up to the Shrivers, and that was in 2014. So my thing is that you probably need to engage more people who are more experienced in doing meet directorship, because you already have a lot of great coaches, but you have to come up with your standards. What are your standards going to be? And I'll leave it there.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I'm going to add that into the slide so I can put it into the notes to send out to everyone. If I put it in as not being entirely compliant with USAPL rules, does that summarize your thought?
Yes.
All right, awesome. Thank you. Does anyone else have any more issues that they identified at the state tournament that they want to bring up at this point? Oh, all right. Well, we will move right along to the weight and solutions that we have found so far for the weight. Like I said, the length of time before competition began plays a pretty big role in all of the issues that we had laid out. So, for instance, the weigh-ins, that's a completely different subject, but that would be something that falls into the weight. So it's kind of broken out over the next few slides. The first solution that we have is having the powerlifting cards completed with all information prior to the event. So that will have their name, their age, their delegation, their initial lift, their weight class. And the only thing it wouldn't have on there is their body weight, because we would wait to fill that part in until we actually do the weigh-in so we can get an accurate read on it. But if we do this, it will really cut down on the time of shuffling all the cards and doing all of the data entry. So that should shave down the time quite a lot. Another way is we're looking into a way to have the powerlifting stage completely set up during opening ceremonies. So we were able to have the platforms and everything on the stage towards the back, which was a huge help. It was a big part on the opening ceremonies crew for letting us do that. So we're looking to continue that to make sure that as soon as opening ceremonies is done, we can get right started rolling into our competition. And the third solution that we had for this is making sure that everything is submitted in measurement of kilos and equipment is properly checked during the weigh-in, because this will save us a lot of time. With the whole kilos thing, we had multiple people who submitted things in pounds, and then they had to come back up to us because they realized it was in pounds and switch it to kilos. So it really just added on to the time, as well as the equipment. If we check all of the equipment beforehand, that will eliminate an athlete coming up to the bench and us noticing, oh, they don't have their socks on. So then we have to wait for them to go put on their socks, and the time really just adds up. So I think that if we do all of the things, it should drastically cut it down, and our athletes will only have to wait a little bit, and then they can get started with their event. Does anyone have any other solutions right now for how to cut down the length of time before competition?
Well, again, I'm just talking from my past experience, and I know there are other people who are probably more experienced with the Special Olympics. But I believe that there was a time where the athletes were not only listed. Can somebody mute their phone, please?
Dan, if you wouldn't mind muting your phone, that would be wonderful.
Yeah, I tried to dial into that phone number, but it wouldn't let me in, said it was busy.
So just hit the microphone on your phone to mute it.
Okay, try that. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
How about now?
Yes.
Yes.
All right, how about now?
Yes. Just stop doing what you're doing because it's very distracting. Just sit for an hour. Okay, be calm. Take a deep breath. Good. Okay. Now I lost my train of thought. But anyway, when I was coaching, I know that some of the athletes, they not only had their age groups, which again, goes by USA weightlifting guidelines, but they also had age groups. And I think you're still doing that. Yes?
Yeah.
Okay, so on your attempt cards, you need to not only have the person's name, delegation, age, which puts them in a teen group or a master's group, and that's an easier way to do your scorekeeping. Then you have their supposed weight class that they want to be in, but if they don't make weight, then they either go up or down. And a lot of that information should be entered into some type of a database by the coaches to one central location so that all of that can be pre-populated prior to the event. And I think this is where maybe your organization fell off the charts this year, because I know Les used to do that for everyone, and it's a very time-consuming, tedious process. But I can tell you from running many competitions, having a good database where you can get all that information loaded in prior to the event, then when you show up in the morning for your weigh-in, you give the coaches the cards, and the coaches go with the athletes to the weigh-in with their equipment, where the weigh-in person checks the card. There's a kilo chart in the warm-up area or the weigh-in room. They tell you what their opening attempts are, and then that goes out to the scorer's table, and everything gets entered into the database so that everything is right while they're getting weighed in. All of this is taking place behind the scenes. So again, typically you're supposed to have a 2-hour weigh-in period. You weigh in at 8, you start lifting at 10, and once everybody weighs in, they're usually completed in an hour, and they have that another hour to warm up to get ready to come out and lift. But again, the Special Olympics is done in a different accordance. They have their opening ceremonies, so things aren't, again, in the same timelines that are required. So you have to make a decision. How do you want to do this to best facilitate a well-run meet? I think it can be done, but I think you need people who know how to do this to help you behind the scenes. And I know you guys have great database people. So.
Yeah, definitely. Joel Pennenberg has offered to kind of learn the system and be that person who really knows the database along with another individual that we have. So we're hoping to have 2 people on that for next year because I know that's extremely important and would cut down on the time. In your experience, is there a specific program that you have used that you would recommend?
You're breaking up. I can't say that again.
Is there a specific program that you have used that you recommend?
Well, we have a program through USAPL that we use for our local. I use them for my developmental meets, and I would have to talk to them about getting permission to utilize them or share them with your organization. But I do, the guy who developed the program trains at my gym, so I can certainly reach out to them and get back to you on that. But yes, there are definitely programs that allow you to have like an Excel spreadsheet, where you have all that information and basically you preload everything. So at your competition, you not only have a card system, but you also have someone who's running a scorer's table, running the data entry. So at the end of the competition, whether it's at the end of the bench press or the deadlift, you've got your subtotals in, and you just need to, continue along, and it just calculates everything out for you in the end, and it's very efficient.
Okay, awesome. That would be great.
Yeah. And kudos, Steve. The one other thing, I know it's on our list as far as the cars that are completed ahead of time. I know there was a couple issues with the limitations of some of the lifters with their physical disabilities as well. So I know if we could just make a note that needs to be included on the cards as well for the officials to know that person X or person Y and Z has muscle or bone limitations where they can't fully extend. But yeah, that would capture it there.
Yeah, that's a great idea.
Again, that's where you come into USAPL rules versus Special Olympic accommodations. And I think, I'm also now a referee and a coach for the powerlifting on the national and international scene, and was running the Endeavor Games last year. These are things that I think from a Special Olympian standpoint, and according to the guidelines that are in the IPF powerlifting rules, we, as a Special Olympics, we have to make those accommodations for certain athletes. And the event, even though it is considered a state meet, what everybody needs to be mindful of is that if select athletes are going to be selected to go to a national level competition, they must know the USAPL rules, because at that level, they're being judged on the international and national level. So, you don't want to set them up for failure, but you also want to allow them to have the best time that they can while participating in the event. Now, I know there have been times where some of the athletes, they cannot extend fully. When an athlete goes out, according to USAPL rules, if there's issues with a joint, and it's the same way in USA weightlifting, you bring that to the judge's attention. And if that athlete can only extend to, not a complete extension, then that's as far as they're going to go. That is their full extension. But that, again, becomes a education piece for whoever you're going to put in those judges' chairs, because I can tell you that most of the judges, like myself, who are national level USAPL and powerlifting coaches and referees, we're not going to let that pass unless someone brings it to your attention. So putting it on the card is one thing, but actually having it take place on the platform, you want that consistency from lift to lift for every athlete.
Agreed. Yeah, it's like you said, it's one thing to put it on the card, it's another to make sure the officials are aware. And with that, adaptations, I think the adaptations, and then I think it's also on the card is if they need, and I forget the terminology, but for the bench press, if they need the footsteps or whatever that go under for those that have shorter legs.
Yeah, usually on the card you would have the athlete's name, you would have a lot number if you did it that way, you would have their age group, their weight class, if they use blocks and
Yeah.
how many, so that when the announcer is calling the lifter out, the loaders can set up the platform within that time that they're loading the bar to make sure that the bar and the platform are ready for that specific athlete. So typically it's the name, the weight class, the weight on the bar, the rack height, and if the athlete is using any type of blocks. And I know there were some athletes who required strapping for CP, to make sure that they were secure and safe on the bench.
Yep, exactly.
So could we have that as kind of also the role of the coach? We decided to eliminate having a volunteer be the escort to the platform because most coaches go up with their athlete anyways. So for an athlete who needs an adaptation, could that just be the coach's role to say, hey, so-and-so needs this adaptation, and is that how we would fulfill that?
Well, typically the coaches are the ones that know these athletes the best. And again, I know there are some teams, like Howard County is huge. Montgomery County has grown tremendously. So their coaching staff has also grown. And you have to have the coaches available, and I think that they're more than willing to do that because the athletes become very attuned to what these coaches have been training them for months. And so to bring someone who's a stranger, who doesn't know the cue that an athlete might be used to hearing from his coach, maybe putting that athlete at a disadvantage. So yes, it is the coach's responsibility, or his delegate, whoever he has as an assistant coach or volunteers who've been training with these athletes for months to get them to this point. And then you would see, a very consistent, probably a consistent movement of the athletes on and off the platform with the coach, because some of the athletes might know what they need, but some of them are really not, able to express what they need to make them as successful as possible.
Yeah, I would agree.
Yeah.
The other thing on that, Kendall, is I agree that the coaches play a significant role in getting the athletes up and like we were talking with the verbal commands, getting ready to do their lifts and listening to the officials. But I know there was one or two situations, very minor, but I think for the larger programs or maybe even some of the smaller, that they designate 1/2 people to do that. I say that because there was one or two instances that I witnessed where a county had their head coach and two lifters from that same county. One was on platform 1, one was on platform 2. They were having to go kind of back and forth. So I think having each county program designate 2 coaches that are fully aware of each of the athletes, so that if that situation arises again, we don't have to pause for that, 35 to 45 seconds going back and forth between the platforms for one coach.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
How many athletes did you have participate, and how many flights were there?
There were 60 athletes who participated in the bench, 56 who did the deadlift and the combination. And there were 4 flights, I believe.
Okay. Okay.
Dan, do you have anything that you want to add to this? All right, well, if you guys want to move along to the next slide, this is about kilograms versus pounds. So we are going to continue to use kilograms at the state event to stay in compliance with SOI, Special Olympics International's governing rules. However, we will have pound weights available in the warm-up area because I know that is what a lot of our athletes are comfortable with. Most county programs don't have access to kilogram weights, which is understandable, but for the competition itself, we do need it to be in kilograms. We're going to continuously emphasize to coaches throughout the season that kilograms are what everything needs to be submitted in. That way, once we have it, everything will be the same. We won't have to do any conversions, which will help cut back on time again. And we will also distribute kilogram to pound conversion charts to everyone at the beginning of the season following the preseason webinar, as well as having copies at the actual state event. So for spectators, if they're not sure what it is, they can easily look at their chart and see what their athlete is lifting. Does anyone have any thoughts on kilograms versus pounds?
Has the state purchased their own competition kilo sets?
No, we rent from Steve Wood. He supplies equipment for powerlifting competitions throughout the country. So they have a set of kilogram weights that we use for it. And they're really great to work with. And they are the ones who actually, they have giant kilogram to pound conversion charts that they can put up.
Okay.
Yeah,
I'm just asking because I know. And what is the brand of equipment that you're using?
I do not know, but I can give him a call tomorrow and follow up with you on it.
I don't believe it was Ivanko. Dan, do you remember what the plates were? If you give me a couple, well, I don't know if it's important tonight, but yeah, Kendall can follow up and get that information for you.
Yeah, it's either Eco or Titan or York or, I just wanted to see what they were using. So they should have 20 kilo bars and collars and everything from, reds, blues, greens, yellows, because everything should be color coded. Again, so standardization is very important so that if these athletes and coaches are going to a national competition, those are the weights that are going to be used. And I know that this year USAPL has made some changes to the equipment that they will allow on a USAPL platform and not at the higher levels. I don't think that affects you guys, but just to be sure that everybody is familiar with how to load the bar and what the conversions are is really important.
Agreed. And Kendall, one other thing, and I apologize if this is on one of your other slides here. It just hit me. I think there was an issue, and I think there was just some miscommunication, which is easily addressed for next year. But for the scales, for the athletes weighing in, I know Steve Wood and his team brought in some, and I think there was just miscommunication that we used the ones from our office, and I don't believe they had been calibrated and verified. So I think that's just something we need to make sure that we use Steve's weigh-in or the scales for the weigh-in of the athletes, and if we use ours, we just need to make sure that they are calibrated leading up to the event.
Yeah, definitely. I talked with Steve about this on Tuesday, and we're just going to stick to using their scales because they have them calibrated pretty frequently with all of the events that they run. So I figure that's our safe bet. Just stick with Steve. Anybody have anything else on kilograms versus pounds, or we can move along to the next slide, which is about weigh-in?
Well, just while you're talking about equipment, are you still using the 7-kilo bar for athletes who cannot lift a 20-kilo bar? Has any progress been made on that rule at the IPF level?
I know that we have, or Special Olympics Maryland has accepted the use of a lighter bar because we have 3 athletes who are in need of using it. I'm not sure if it's exactly 7 kilograms. Mike, do you know by any chance what the rule change was with the weight of the bar?
I don't know it offhand. What I can tell you, LJ, is that based on our experience and that you were intimately involved with in 2014, we submitted a rule change request to get it down to whatever the weight bar, or to allow whatever the weight bar was that Laurie Plaxton was using, and again a couple others too. They did actually change the rule for Special Olympics officially to allow a lighter weight bar, but not as light as what we needed. I think it went, I'm making numbers up here, but it was somewhere along the lines of we needed a bar that weighed maybe a quarter of what a traditional bar weighs, and they made it the rule that they would allow, that it would go down to half. With that, we in Maryland are continuing to allow those athletes to use the lighter weight bar. We're making that variation within Maryland for that, and with the knowledge that that means that they likely would not be eligible to move on to competition outside the state.
Okay.
But it allows them to continue to participate in the sport that I know two of the 3 athletes very well, and I know it is an incredibly important sport for them.
Yeah. No, I know, because there's, I mean, in the gym we have training bars that go down to, 5 kilos for the little kids. So there's a 7-kilo bar we used to use for Laurie, and then the women's bar is a 15-kilo bar and a 20. But again, if at the state level you are not going to be as strict with enforcing the USA rules, USA powerlifting rules, again, it's up to you as an organization to decide how you're going to enforce whatever rules you decide are the best for the athletes who want to participate, with them knowing that there's no chance that they could advance to a national level with the use of those lighter bars, because the rules are very specific at the national level. You must be able to lift 44 pounds or 20 kilos in the bench. That's right. the lightest you can go. So, again, it's just tweaking things a little bit, I think, to make it more athlete friendly for those that might want to do this sport. And the females, and maybe some of the males also, who may have some disabilities, who can't lift that much for whatever the reason, could benefit from using a lighter bar so you don't risk injury. It's all about the safety, and that's the key. So,
yeah, I think we're on the same page there. So.
Yep.
Okay. Well, with that, I think it ties a little bit into our weigh-ins that we will be doing. So for this next state competition, the thought is to require coaches to host a weigh-in at their last practice before Fall Sports Festival and to submit those weights to the state office. I know we had weights submitted, but some of them were like 30 to 35 pounds off, so they might have just been guesses. And it's a lot easier for us to just kind of tweak some numbers instead of going in and having to change everything completely. So I think if we do that, it'll really make the weigh-in a lot smoother. And what we're looking at doing is having one official per locker room to run the weigh-in, record the weight right into the system, and do an equipment check. So there would be a male official in the male locker room and a female official in the female locker room. That way we are knocking out 2 birds with 1 stone, and we can get this done before opening ceremonies begins. And then during opening ceremonies, me and whoever's running the program, we can work on getting everything set up so we're just ready to go as soon as opening ceremonies is finished. We can get a little warm up in and then start rolling. Does anyone have anything on weigh-ins? Any other ideas for this?
I don't know how you do your weigh-ins. I mean, I think from my experience, I think it's been run first come, first serve kind of thing. And I think, you know, if you're able to get to a point where, like you say, you have, you know, I think you have 2 qualifying competitions per season, and the coaches are required to submit to the national office the qualifying totals or lifts. They may also want, with that second qualifier, to submit in advance, like you said, a projected body weight, because, you know, many of us who've competed, you hope you're going to make weight, but you don't want to get into a point where everybody's weighing in and everything's switching classes up and down, and it just causes chaos. So having some sort of a body weight recorded by the coaches at the, you know, later in the season, and then looking at the weight classes to see where these athletes are going to sit, in addition to the age groups, is going to give you a better look, you know, going into the weigh-in. In other words, if you have 4 flights of athletes, flight A weighs in from 8 to 8:30. Flight B weighs in from, you know, 8:30 to 9, whatever it is, you know, it doesn't take that long. But typically your weight classes or your flights have a designated weigh-in time, and I don't know that you've ever done that, and I'm not sure how you would work that into your process, but that might help a little bit with getting things done. The equipment check really should be done prior to the weigh-in, because you don't want people taking extra time in the scale room getting their equipment checked. So there should be, when you check your athletes in, there should be a check-in table. At that check-in table should be a roster with all the athletes who are competing, and they should have all their equipment with them. You have your referee there checking their equipment, making sure they have their singlet, their t-shirt, their knee socks, their sneakers, wrist wraps, belt. All of those things get checked off. They give them their attempt card. They go to the weigh-in. The weigh-in takes place. They give the card back to the coach, and you just move it on. So, you know, I think that may be a better system to keep it more organized. But again, the way you run your competitions with all benching and then all deadlifting, you know, it's a little different, but if you have 4 flights, that may get your weigh-ins done sooner, because typically a weigh-in is only going to last about an hour. Even though we give a 2-hour window, athletes want to be able to just get weighed in because they want to eat.
Yeah, I think that's actually that would be a really great system to have.
Yeah, you have to have your check-in station set up, you know, outside, like a main area that is very, I don't want to say it's isolated, but, you know, you don't, if you're going to hold it at the same place, you know, maybe off into one of those rooms where you set up the food for the referees. You know, that's your check-in area. You've got 2 tables set up. You've got 2 referees sitting there for whoever is ready to be checked in, get their cards, get over to the weigh-in area. And then all the official has to do in the weigh-in area is confirm the body weight, age group, date of birth, you know, whatever it is that you use as identifying factors at the weigh-in.
Yeah, that would be great to do. Thanks. That's a really good suggestion. I never would have thought of it. Anyone else have anything along with weigh-ins? No? Okay, so the next slide is volunteers and having properly trained volunteers, which is super important, especially in the sport of powerlifting, because the risk of injury is pretty high in any sport. But powerlifting it can be dangerous if people aren't paying proper attention. So one of our ideas was to have either one of our officials or a sports management team member who knows powerlifting like the back of their hand to help properly train our powerlifting volunteers at the orientation that we do for the students at Mount St. Mary's. And on Thursday, Steve, correct me if I'm wrong, I think it happened on Thursday before our competition, when our competition was on Saturday. And if we could just go over more depth with them exactly what their roles are, the seriousness of it, and I think that would definitely help. Day of, when we do another on-site training, we want to separate the groups of volunteers by role and have the competition director and other key management team members kind of split up and go over exactly what the volunteer is going to be doing and paying attention to the responsibilities and risks that could happen in their role, with a very big emphasis on spotting and loading. This was brought up to me by a few people that some of our spotters and loaders weren't necessarily paying the best of attention at times, and that is really where we could run into trouble. So we want to make sure that we have the best volunteers possible that are paying attention and keeping our athletes out of harm's way. Like I said earlier, we are going to be removing having volunteers as escorts and just having the coaches escort their athletes on stage. It's going to make there be way less people up there, so less traffic. It'll be easier to get your next list into the scorers table. And with eliminating volunteers as escorts, it will open up a new role for them. And we were thinking that this could be having them enter into GMS, the awards as divisions finish up, because it is way easier to print results out of GMS because it goes into like first, second, third, and fourth place compared to printing out a spreadsheet that's 60 cells wide by 60 cells tall, which we tried to do last year. And it was just very confusing for the awards part, and it slowed things down. So I think if we go through GMS and we have someone who is actively doing it as we are receiving these results, it'll really help with the time at awards, and also will give our volunteers something to do instead of just standing around. Anyone have any views on this? Think it's a good idea? Think I could tweak it a little?
I think, all of your volunteers are great most of the time, but I just, if a lot of these volunteers have never seen a competition or participated in a competition, one session I don't think is enough. And a webinar is not the way to do that. It has to be a person-to-person, hands-on, showing them how things need to be done, because that's where you get into issues. Again, I know these kids, they're just so supportive, and they're really very excited when they show up at these competitions to help. But as good as they're trying to be, they really need to focus, and maybe sometimes switching them out. You can't use the same people the entire day, because people do get tired, and that's when they get sloppy, and that's when you get in trouble. So, I would recommend doing more than one training session, not only for the volunteers who are going to be the loading and spotting, but whoever your referees are. And I think I heard last year you had USAPL referees, which was a good and a bad thing on some levels, but at least they understand the rules, and they should be the ones, the head referee should be the one guiding those volunteers who are loading and spotting to make sure that the bars are loaded accurately. But that doesn't discount the fact that the loaders have to know what they're doing. And I don't know if you had loading charts, but those are also available online. You can print them off yourself. It's at thebarsnotgonaloaditself.com, and you could print out these loading charts so people can have laminated copies at the referee's chair, at the loaders and volunteers chair, so they know what plates are going on where. Some of them are color-coded, so it helps them. The only thing it doesn't do, it doesn't do the 7-kilo bar, but there may be a way that you can manipulate it to do that for you. So again, it's just little things that we do at these higher level competitions when we have 500, 600 athletes competing, to make it easier for the people who are helping us run it to get it done on the platform.
Yeah, I believe we did have loading charts last year, but I will make sure that we have a bunch of them. Does anyone else have anything? This is all awesome feedback, so thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Dan or Scott, I see you're back on the line. Either of you have anything?
And I will just reemphasize what you had said, Kendall, is they did have the loading charts on site, so I'm not sure. I think good points there with, I think it was the head official at each one would tell the loaders what goes on the bar, but I think having that in our trainings with the volunteers would also be extremely beneficial, just so they're aware of what's going on.
Definitely, especially because I feel like this sport, our volunteers aren't as familiar with compared to flag football or long distance running. There's a lot that goes into it. So I think the more we inform them, the better off the event itself is going to run.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, this brings me to the last issue that we had identified, and then we will have a few minutes after to see if anyone has anything else that they thought of during this. But the order of flights. So we are going to distribute the flights the Tuesday before Fall Sports Festival, and it's going to be based off of the power rating, which is body weight divided by the initial lift. By distributing the flights ahead of time, this can help the athletes and their families prepare for when they need to come to the event. So if they are in the last flight and they aren't inclined to come to opening ceremonies, it'll save them a lot of time. And that is less time that we have them sitting around, which is really what we want to avoid. Pretty much, we just want it to be a lot better run and go more quickly so we don't keep them there until 6 o'clock at night. Does anyone have anything on flights that they would like to share? LJ, am I right that the power rating is body weight divided by initial lift? I know that's what I had talked about with one of my coaches, but I just wanted to double check.
Well, so then that means you're not going to have a weigh-in.
Does that eliminate the weigh-in?
Yes, ma'am, because what you're saying is if you're going to allow an athlete, we'll use Thomas Morer as one of your prime examples. He's not going to be opening up until the last of the bench presses or the last of the deadlifts. So are you saying that Thomas doesn't have to show up until 10:30? Well, then how do you get a weigh-in the day of the meet? That, I don't know how you can, if you do that. I mean, again, this is your game. If you want to do that, then how do you justify that body weight is true? How do you verify, like you said, you had body weights that were 30 pounds off? You're going to have people showing up that say they weigh 180 pounds and they might weigh 210. So I don't know that that's a real good idea. But I'm just going to put that out there. I don't know who brought that up or how that power rating was devised, but at that point you might as well just have a free-for-all and just let everybody come and lift and base it off a coefficient, which can be done, and that's a simple formula. You just, everybody lifts 3 lifts. Whoever lifts whatever they lift, everybody is compared to the same coefficient for a male or a woman, And depending on how big that number comes out after you multiply all those numbers, there's your awards. So you have no weight classes anymore, and you have no first, second, and third. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah, I would echo what you're saying there. I wasn't aware of this one, but yeah, I think we definitely have to have the weigh-ins. And I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I think we could do a projected flights.
You're right.
But what we also want to do is if we give the option, like you said, if we're saying you don't have to show up till this time, if we're doing all the weigh-ins in the morning, they still need to be there to get the true weight of each athlete leading into the competition. And I think part of it is, on the other aspect, is the athletes enjoy the opening ceremony and cheering on their other athletes and being there to get in the spirit of the event. And powerlifting is not our biggest event as far as athlete numbers, but I think there would be some that would say, well, I don't got to show up till 1 o'clock or whatever. So I would definitely keep it as the schedule goes: weigh-ins early in the morning, during the ceremony we'll finalize some information, but we could give projected flights for those family members who may not have all day to spend and have a couple hours. This is when you need to be there. But yeah, I would keep the schedule as we kind of had it and just fine tune it, but I would not eliminate the weigh-ins. That's my opinion.
Okay, yeah, no, I agree. That's LJ.
Yeah.
I'm very thank you for
It just sounds like there was, from the feedback that I got from some of the coaches, was that it wasn't as well organized prior to the event because you had lost some of your more seasoned coaches and meet directors who were available years past. And that happens sometimes. But there are certain processes for running these events that if you do what you need to do prior to the event and you stick to the guidelines and the dates and times, again, it's up to the coaches and the families to know that, trust me, powerlifting is never a sport where you're going to get in and out of there in 2 hours. You're always going to spend, okay? And I've been doing this for over 35 years. So, in the events that I was participating, I think, we had it pretty much down to a science, and we were getting out of there by 2, 3 o'clock in the afternoon. So the only other thing that I could suggest, and I don't know if this year would be the year to try that, but, you run bench press first, and then you run deadlifts. It might be something to look into for the future, to say that everybody has to show up, everybody has to weigh in the morning, but you have 2 sessions like you do, but your lighter weight sessions, so let's just say you have 60 athletes, 30 of them lift bench and deadlift in the morning, and then you take your little hour break, you have your lunch, and the second flight lifts in the afternoon session. So you have, everybody has lifted, but not everybody is waiting 6 hours to deadlift. And you probably will get out of there in the same amount of time. So that's just something to consider.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea. Definitely something to look into more.
Because then the families can say, okay, my athlete is in the morning session. Everybody's got to be there in the morning to weigh in. But I know exactly what flight, what session my athlete's lifting in, and my athlete will start lifting at 10 and pretty much be done by 12. And then if you want to start do your lunch break the way you normally do, then your afternoon session starts at 1 and you're done by 3. And you're out of there. Running flights with 30 people, it's, sessions is 2 flights of 15, which moves pretty quickly. Running 2 platforms with 30 on each platform can become time consuming when it comes to loading and spotting and getting people through for their 3 attempts. So I'm just talking off the top of my head, different things that we do on, at the USAPL and other organizations. So.
No, I think that's interesting and definitely something we need to look into, because obviously at the end of the competition, another holdup is calculating all the awards and getting all that done. So if you have the morning session and afternoon session, that may be something where we could have a different location with the award stands somewhere else, so we could go ahead and award the morning session while the afternoon session is getting warmed up right after lunch or whatever, and that would eliminate a lot of the time that takes to wait for everyone to get their awards.
Right.
So I think that's something we can definitely look into.
Right.
My only question with it, and I don't remember it taking a long time at all from transitioning the platform from bench press to deadlift, but do you know approximately how long that takes?
5 minutes.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So that would be very minor.
Yeah, you just got to move.
It's basically just taking the bench off of the stage and bringing the loading bar up and that kind of stuff.
Okay, yeah, that's definitely something I'd like to look into more. And I'll talk with Steve Wood, who he rents us the equipment, more about this, just because he he goes to these events all the time, so he has a good read on things.
And again, if any of you have not seen, and I don't want to use this incorrectly, so don't yell at me, a real powerlifting competition, there is a big one at the University of Maryland this Saturday. So, you can see how they're run. And some of these competitions, well, this one I think probably has about 150 athletes, but they'll run 2 platforms and they'll be in and out of there, for different sessions. They'll start in the morning, they'll finish session 1, and then they'll start the afternoon session, and they'll run squat, bench, and deadlift, for certain weight classes and age groups, and then they go into the afternoon session. So you can learn a lot if you just go and watch the process. And many times, this is what I do with my athletes or my coaches when they want to get into this sport. Before you can get out there and start doing it, you got to see how it happens. And these events, it's usually done pretty efficiently. So, I don't know, where is this person, Stephen Woods, from?
He is from Virginia, I believe. Steve, am I?
Yeah, he's from Virginia. He's done Virginia Special Olympics and some other mainstream USPL events, as well as he's conducted at least, I want to say it was at least in 2014. I don't believe he was in the 2010 USA Games for the National Games for Special Olympics, but I know he was up there 2014 in New Jersey for the USA Games, providing equipment and either being official or an announcer. Okay. And then the other gentleman we brought up was from North Carolina, and he's been involved with IPF and running events in Orlando and some others, and he's been involved with Special Olympics since '98 at the World Games and National Games levels.
Yeah, okay.
So although they're 2 great individuals and great resources, they have their particular expertise. So we had those 2 gentlemen who they run great events. So it was a combination of stuff this year. Was new personnel, new officials, new roles for people, and again, some of our lead-up lack of gathering information and getting things right on the page. So I want to commend you, Kendall, for putting this together, and the members who are on your management team, and everybody tonight for taking the time to talk through this. I think we made some good movements this past year from previous years, but with that came some struggles, and I think we're addressing those now so that moving forward we are going to be in a good place for the athletes, coaches, and spectators to show what we can do and show off the showcase the skills of the athletes.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you all for, I feel like this was more beneficial to me than to anyone else. But like I said, I really appreciate all of your feedback and all of your great ideas. And we are out of time, but I will type all of my notes up and I will send them out. LJ, I will definitely be in contact with you because I'd love to take your brain a little bit more. And
Okay.
Scott, I see you're still on the line. I'm not sure if you have anything else you want to discuss. Nope, Scott just left. But LJ, do you have anything else?
No, I mean, I'll help you as much as I can. I don't know that I can commit because, I have to look at the timelines and schedules and stuff. But I really think, the missing piece was having someone who could serve as your meet director. And,
Yeah.
as much as I would love to tell you I'd love to do that for you, I don't want to give you false hopes because I don't know what my calendar is going to bring in the fall for my own athletes and my gym and competitions and stuff. But, if there's any way I can help you to fix the processes, I don't think any of this is difficult and I don't think it can't be done. But, again, I think it's just an education piece, and you've got a lot of good people who are already involved. So it's just pulling everybody's together, and making sure everybody understands, maybe doing a little more training, a little more in advance for volunteers, spotters, loaders. But otherwise, I've been very happy with the times that I've been involved. And I think that was the key issue missing this year.
Yeah, I definitely agree. And I would love to come see a powerlifting competition. I actually I'm in charge of alpine skiing and I have an on-snow training all day on Saturday. But I will start looking for more just so I can have a better understanding of it all.
Yeah,
Mike,
you
do you have anything?
you can go to the USA Powerlifting Maryland website. And look at the schedule. There's usually competitions all the time, and depending on where you live, they're all over the country. So USA Powerlifting is the biggest powerlifting organization right now in the country. So between them and USA Weightlifting, they've kept me very busy.
Okay. I'll have to check that out.
Okay.
Mike, do you have any closing comments or anything you want to bring up?
No, basically Steve covered what I was going to say, which was that just how well your team put this together. And LJ, your insights are incredibly valuable as always, and it's great to hear from you again. And
yeah, I'm back. I'm just busy, but I'm here. If you need a consultant or, like I've said to the coaches that were Montgomery counties, if they need me, I'll do my best to help when I can. But let's just take it one day at a time.
right, we appreciate that.
Okay.
All right. Well, have a wonderful night. Thank you again for taking time out of your Thursday. I know you're busy, so I really appreciate it.
The Olympics are on. Go watch.
That's right.
Oh, I know. I'm actually waiting to do that.
Thanks.
All right, thanks everyone.
All right, have a good day.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.